Her hair is long, streaming, wild, and auburn. A gray cloak masks her tattered white dress. You see her eyes are red from her continuous weeping, and her complexion reminds you of the ghosts that haunt your dreams. A spectral form of a woman, a harbinger of death. It isn't until it's too late that you realize you heard her far before you ever laid eyes on her. The wailing, shrieking, keening, a sign of the eternal slumber that awaits us all. This spirit is known by many names in many different cultures, but probably most famously by the Irish, Banshee. Banshee translates more literally to woman of the fairy mound or fairy woman. Her form shifts from community to community. At times, a wailing, ghastly form with a shock of red hair, a towering woman, and other stories have her as an old and frail woman. Depending on where you are, she can be more aligned with the stature connected to her fairy mound origin, anywhere between 1 to 4 feet tall. In some tales, she is a sweet young woman singing a mournful song to warn of coming death, and still in others, she's a young girl who suffered a brutal death herself. In other cultures, she is clad in white, arriving to portend any number of negative happenings. The unifying cross-cultural factor, the sound, keening, sometimes referred to as a scream or a wail. The sound of the banshee is their most notable feature. The sound is usually associated with a forthcoming death, but in some cultures it can lead one to any number of foreboding conclusions. As with most long-standing legends, some elements come from real life. In Ireland and parts of Scotland, a traditional part of mourning the dead is the keening woman, who wails a lament. Traced back to the 8th century, this custom involved women who accepted alcohol as payment for their sorrowful elegies, and thus were thought to be sinners, doomed to become banshees in the afterlife. But other sources say these funeral chanteuses were professionals and in high demand. Years of stories make new stories, and Irish legend also tells of laments being sung by the fairy women. If a member of a family succumbed to death in a far-off land, news would not reach the family quickly. Often, the banshee's song would be the first warning of terrible news to come. It was not always sung for a death that had already transpired, but more often than not, be the foretelling of an approaching expiration. It is sometimes said that the oldest Irish families have their own banshee. Families with a succession of unfortunate departures may become familiar with their banshee's cry. Some traditions tell that when multiple banshees can be heard wailing at once, it portends the death of a major figure of familial, royal, or religious significance. Over the years, and especially in media, the most prevalent version of the banshee has become a ghastly, ghostly spirit who may be evil, who foretells death, and in some stories will even cause death themselves. While the banshee is tied to this specific region, there are other banshee-type figures all over the world referred to as the White Lady, Woman in White, and the Wailing Woman. In many other countries, ethereal women are often thought to be harbingers and victims of doom, death, and sadness, appearing in the house of the soon-to-die, day or night, and even in photos. Whatever their medium, they always paint a picture of imminent devastation. In Brazil, Dama Branca, or Mulher de Branco, is said to be the ghost of a young woman who died of childbirth or from violence. She is uncharacteristically silent and usually arrives as a reminder, a visible memorial, to the tragic deaths of women who suffered at the hands of colonial Brazil's system of honor killings. She is not a warning of dangers to come, but a reminder of the ever-present evils of man. In Russia, the maidens of Alli are East Siberian folklore of a young woman who did not wish to marry her abusive fiancé. She saw that her only escape was taking her own life. After her death, she became a Zayan, or spirit, and joined the other spirit maidens, banding together to haunt would-be husbands with less than honorable intentions on their wedding day, seducing them and dragging them to the netherworld, saving the young brides from the heartache the maidens suffered in life. In the Philippines, caparosa are used in ghost and horror stories for young children, though sightings happen all over the country. One of the most prominent sightings is the White Lady of Balete Drive in Quezon City. She is the ghost of a woman who died in a car accident on Balete Drive. Taxi drivers working the graveyard shift see a stunning woman with long hair dressed in all white, and when they approach to give her a ride, the woman's face is mutilated and bruised, causing the cabbie to run away in terror. Other stories go that lone drivers see the face of a white-clad woman in the rearview mirror, and she quickly disappears. There are so many other myths of women in white around the world. La Llorona, Vite Viven, Tao, Yurei. Anytime a woman in white or Banshee is seen, whether silently stalking the site of their demise, or wailing across the moors of the countryside forewarning the coming death of a loved one, two things are certain. You'll wish you hadn't seen her, and you can never unhear the wail of the Banshee.